Hello! Happy Monday! And happy Christmas Eve Eve? Hello, you guys. Oh, thank you, Druid. Um, so yeah, it's Monday. It's the week of Christmas. And although I'm not feeling particularly Christmassy, I forced myself. I do have to say today has been a good day thus far, knocking on wood that it stays that way. I have a handful of chores that I needed to do. It's Festivus. Yes, we are a couple days behind Festivus. I feel like I did my airing of the grievances the other day though. um I got half my chores done this morning before the stream. So that's good. And I don't know how this happened because this hasn't happened in years, but my mortgage company told me that my escrow account has a balance. And I got the check today and it's $100. So I feel rich. So that seems to never happen, but I don't know how it happened this year. But anyway, and my mortgage payment will decrease next year. So that's nice. That's nice, especially in this economy. I cannot complain. So yeah, I've been forcing myself to listen to Christmas carols and holiday music and stuff. You know, just trying to eke out a little bit of holiday cheer for my my friends and family. Here's an interesting one. So I found this has actually kind of been debunked I found it on Snopes.com. But I saw this thing. I don't think it was on TikTok. I think it was like maybe on YouTube or something, but I'm seeing Snopes debunked this as a TikTok post. But anyway, if you're familiar with the song I'll Be Home for Christmas, I'm sure you are because it's been performed by 1,000,001 people. Mariah Carey, Bing Crosby, Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, The Carpenters. I'm sure Taylor Swift has done it. Michael Bublé, I know, has. Probably Harry Connick Jr. Like, anybody who's put out a Christmas album or whatever has done this. But here are the lyrics. And these are the lyrics as written. I'll be home for Christmas. You can blank on me. Please have snow and mistletoe and presents on the tree. So you can blank on me. What word, without looking, what word comes to mind? What word would fill in that blank? I'll be home for Christmas. You can blank on me. I'm not going to try to sing it, guys, because that would bum you out for sure. I am a terrible singer. So, hey, JB. Well, you know what? Getting out of bed and doing some laundry. I, too, have done some laundry. I haven't pulled it out of the washing machine yet because this. But, yeah. Yes, laundry is definitely something. So, I'll leave it there for a minute. I'll be home for Christmas. You can blank on me. What's the word that's missing? Let you think about it for a minute. So what I'm going to do today, I'll do my Tinies update. And then we have some more Christmas goodness from the 1858 December Godey's Ladies book. I have not pre-read, so I have no idea. It's probably going to be another 1858 Hallmark movie. You know, if the Hallmark Channel thinks they have like invented the goofy, ridiculous Christmas story, they clearly have not been reading Godey's, because that Christmas for the Rich and the Poor the other day was like the script for a terrible Hallmark Christmas movie. So we'll see what the other Christmas article or story is. Also, I love Grandma's Corner, which was a column in Quilter's Newsletter magazine. And I'm not exactly sure when it got discontinued because I don't have like a full range of, magazines in my collection. Sometime in the 70s, though, I think. So I've got a issue. It's November 74, but it's a Christmassy story, and I've read it before and I like it. But Grandma's Corner was written by Theo I'm not sure if it's pronounced Eason or Essen. It's Eson, so I think it could go either way. But so Theo Essen always writes these, and they're funny. They're funny and they're sweet. So I look forward to reading that one shortly. And then, of course, we have India to finish in the Heritage of Cotton. And I have some good news about some of the images. So haven't been able to do a whole lot with it, but I will at least show you one thing. And then I have a little bit of intel between our MacGyver Percival friend and our Morris Crawford friend. So that is what we're doing today. All right. So I will be home for Christmas. You can blank on me. So the missing word is plan. And that is the way the song was written. Yeah. There you go, JB. So I'll be home for Christmas. You can plan on me. But there was this suggestion that the Mandela effect had taken place, and people seem to think that the lyric is you can count on me, which is, in my head, if I was going to sing it a cappella, which would be painful for everyone in the vicinity, I would think I would have automatically said, I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on me. So the question was, is this a Mandela effect thing? It is not. What Snopes claims is that, let's see, where is it? So they say in the TikTok post, the person played several versions of I'll Be Home for Christmas, including those performed by Bing Crosby, Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, and the Carpenters. They were searching for a version of the song that used the lyrics, I'll be home for Christmas, you can count on me, because Crosby, Como, Sinatra, and Presley all said plan instead. However, the Carpenters recorded version does say count. And apparently, beginning in the late 1950s, artists who were covering the song, whether it was recorded or just, I guess singing, they also started to use count instead of plan. So I thought that was interesting, like the lyrics to things and how they would just change like that. So, hey, Mara Dem. Nobody should count on you for Christmas Druid. Well, I know I could count on you for Festivus and for Solstice, so that's okay. But isn't that funny? And it's something that I guess I actually have paid attention to, because I always feel like when I'm singing along, I'll try to say you can count on me and it'll be plan, and I'll be like, you could count on me must be in some other part of the song, and it's not. So anyway, it is not the Mandela effect. If you said count, you are not entirely wrong, but the original version of the song did say plan. I thought that was interesting. You can count on me. It sounds better to me than you can plan on me. I don't know. It's the difference between what people would say in the 50s or whenever that song. I don't even know when that song was recorded. Okay, it was copyrighted in 1943. So, yeah, 1943. You can plan on me. Yes, Karen Carpenter has a beautiful voice. So, I feel like the world lost her way too soon. So there's your little Christmas trivia. All right. So, a Tiny's update. Here's the one thing I'm not happy about, you guys. My first world problems. So, the advent calendar for the mini brands only goes up to December 24th. But I will admit I have opened December 24th, even though today is only December 23rd, because I was certain I was going to get that JoJo Siwa Barbie head thing. That you put the makeup and style her hair. Which would have been tiny and I wouldn't have been able to do that anyway. But you guys, she isn't in my advent calendar. Like 99% of all the other things that were pictured on an advent calendar box show, like, I got those things. But I started looking, I guess there's a handful of things that were pictured on the box that were not in the advent calendar. So I'm feeling a little salty about that. But, since I already told on myself, this is the December 24th item. I don't know if you can see it very well. It's a little, like robot dog. I feel like I've seen these in the past, advertised somewhere. I don't know. So yeah, he's called Chippy or Chipper. His name is Chipper. I'd rather a real dog than a robot dog, but that's just me. Okay. And then I have a Dora the Explorer little doll. And I feel a little bit dissatisfied with this because there was already a Dora the Explorer doll. She didn't come in a little cardboard thing, though. Then, I don't know what this is. I've never seen these in the store, but it is pretty darn cute, whatever it is. Robot dog does not make up for lack of a styling Barbie. Exactly, right? I thoroughly agree. So this thing, I don't know if it's like some kind of little, I don't know. I guess if this was in the store, it's like maybe some kind of little purse. Yeah, Wish Come True purse set. Shimmer and Shine. I don't know these little characters, but I think I got another Shimmer and Shine thing. So anyway, very cute. And these are the pièces de résistance, are the Crayola things. The Crayola things make up for all of the other weird crap that was in this advent calendar. So we got the 64 colors box of crayons, and the teeny little watercolor paint set. So I'm pretty thrilled about those. Now, unfortunately, the scale is way off because, you know, the teeny little paint set should be almost as big as the little crayons. Now, unfortunately, there are no crayons or paints in these. They don't open. But this especially I thought was really cute because it looks real. And I know that the camera is not picking this up very well. But yeah, wouldn't it be great if there were itty bitty teeny tiny crayons in there? Very cute though. So that is the end of my tinies. I think my husband may have bought me and my son some mini brand stuff. So we'll see if we get some in our stockings. But for the time being, I think we're in a holding pattern with tinies because, you know, they're pricey. I'm hoping to be able to get together with my niece at some point over the holidays or in the new year, because I think I mentioned she prolifically collected these a few years ago, and she's 12 now. And that's an age where I'm like, Shimmer and Shine are Nickelodeon cartoon genies. Okay. My child's in his late 20s. So we did stop watching Nickelodeon quite some time ago. So I'm totally out of the loop. I need a small person in my life, I guess, to reintroduce me to the Nickelodeon stuff. Anyway, what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Oh well, must not have been important, as my mother will say. Jill always likes to do announcements at the beginning. I always forget to do announcements. So, one important thing, I will not be here Thursday. Thursday is a travel day. Jill and I will be back on the 28th for Stitch and Glitch, which is a Saturday thing. Oh gosh, this is terrible. I have to look and see. Oh yes, my niece. I'll get back to her in a second. Thanks, JP. So we will be back for Stitch and Glitch on Saturday, and I hope that you can join us. It'll be fun. I am going to be attempting to weave on this little weaving loom that I found in my stash of things that I have never opened and don't remember when I bought it, but or maybe somebody gave it to me. I don't know. So please join us. It shall be fun, and interesting, hijinky, antic-y. I don't know. Last time there was an inordinate amount of time spent on talking about like fast food chicken. So you don't want to miss out. So yes, my niece is 12. And 12 is one of those ages where like you can either be into toys or you can be into boys. And I don't know which way she's at right now. She's very into sports. She plays soccer. So I'm thinking she might be growing out of the mini brands. So I'm hoping maybe that she would be willing to still indulge us and do some trades. So yeah, wish me luck. All right. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Yeah, definitely check the calendar because yeah, Jill and I have stuff coming up. So tomorrow we will not be on tomorrow night for quilt nerding, but we do have a pre-recorded video if you would like to watch. It will, I think it drops at 2 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And we have all of our video, or it's not video, it's pictures from the Mennonite Life Museum. And there's an amazing quilt there. And yeah, so that would be a fun thing if you're still doing stuff tomorrow, like wrapping gifts or cooking or whatever. It'd be something fun to listen to and watch. I think that's everything for right now. So let us jump into the readings I have for today. So, which would you guys prefer? Ladies' book, the Godey's Ladies' book, or Quilter's Newsletter? I could tell you the Quilter's Newsletter magazine one is very heartwarming, a little sad. I mean, a little sad, but still very heartwarming. And then Godey's is called A Christmas Eve. I think we're going to start with Godey's Ladies magazine. I keep wanting to say the Lady of Godey's because it took me forever to read that book. And then we'll get to Quilter's Newsletter. All right. Are you ready? So as a reminder, this is from Godey's Ladies book, December 1858. This is Sarah Hale was still the editor, and Louis Godey was the publisher. So, this is entitled A Christmas Eve. It was Christmas Eve, and the snow lay deep in the streets of Seeburg, a small mining town in Germany. But the neighboring peasants came down from their mountain homes and sought to forget the rigor of the season in innocent festivity. Family groups assemble together. The voice of song and of childish merriment resounds from many an humble home. This would be the 1858 version of H being a vowel because they put an humble home instead of a humble home. So, an humble home. And preparations are being made for a general illumination. Christmas Eve in Germany is welcomed as a season of rejoicing by the poorest peasant, as well as by the wealthiest noble of the land. But amidst all these happy homes, there was one lowly dwelling, at least, where no feast had been prepared, where no sounds of merriment were heard. Of course, there's always some poor downtrodden person at Christmas that we have to talk about. Veronica Medell had, for some time past, supported her blind father. Yes, this is the beginning of the 1858 Hallmark Christmas special. She had supported her blind father and a little brother by lace making. Once they had known better days. The father had been a slater, an industrious man, but had lost his eyesight from the effects of a conflagration which he had bravely helped to extinguish. So I'm assuming a slater maybe is somebody who works with slate. Slate roofs being, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. It's a mining town, so mining slate, I guess, might be his thing. And a conflagration, of course, is a fire. His wife did not long survive this calamity, but died, partly of grief, partly of overexertion, committing her blind husband and her infant boy to the care of her daughter Veronica, herself still a child. Veronica's mind, however, had been prematurely ripened by the care and sorrow which had so early fallen to her lot, and she well fulfilled the charge committed to her by her dying parent. Let's hope this gets a little sunnier. On this Christmas Eve of which we speak, the young girl had been seated before her lace pillow, working without intermission from early morning till night closed in. Then, poor child, she was forced to pause in her labors, for she could not afford a light. She made, however, a good fire in the stove to warm her blind father, and having placed him in his easy chair close by its side, she yielded to her little brother's entreaties that she would take him out to see the illuminations. The two children accordingly set forth together. Already the whole town was astir. Miners in their characteristic costume marched along in groups, with bands of music preceding them, and ever and anon they paused before the door of some wealthy citizen and caroled forth their Christmas greeting. Then the door of the house so honored might be seen to open, and the master himself would generally step forth and reward the leader of the serenade by presenting to him some small gratuity. Children, following the example of their elders, wandered also in little bands from door to door, singing their Christmas carols, and seldom were the young sinners dismissed without some trifling present, accompanied by a kindly word. As Veronica passed on her way, holding her little brother by the hand, and gazing on these varied groups, a new thought suddenly suggested itself in her mind. Why should she not seek to win some trifling Christmas presents for her poor blind father? Timidly, and with a beating heart, the poor child bent her steps toward a part of the town where she was but little known. The character she was about to play was very new to her, and her heart well nigh failed her when it came to the point. But, left to her father, nerved her to the task, and drawing her hood closely around her, she stepped close under the window of a house of lowly aspect, and sang in a clear, though subdued tone, the following verse. Cheer up, ye miners bold, nor let your courage flag, for earth her wealth untold yields to your patient toil. Then joyous dig beneath the soil, and still be your gathering cry, cheer up, brave hearts, cheer up. Veronica's voice was tremulous with fear when she began these simple lines, but she gained courage as she proceeded. And she repeated the burden of the song with spirit and energy. She then paused and anxiously awaited the result of her efforts. 2 or 3 minutes elapsed. The time seemed long to poor Veronica. She felt humiliated and confused, and was about to withdraw. But at last the door turned on its hinges, and a woman came out and placed in Veronica's trembling hands a small cake and a 2-penny piece. The poor child could scarcely contain herself for joy. "Oh, my dear little George," she exclaimed, "see what a happy beginning I have made." Well, and here is how you trick or treat on Christmas Eve. You shall have the sugar plum, but the cake and the money are for father. Well, so the woman gave her a small cake and a 2-penny piece, but where does the sugar plum come from? Okay. You shall have the sugar plum, but the cake and the money are for father, that he too may be able to keep his Christmas feast. The night was now far advanced, and Veronica, though she would make but one trial more before she turned her steps homeward. This time she determined on trying her chance at the door of a rich man, an inspector of some mines. Clear and firm her young voice now rose through the still midnight air, and when her song ceased, the window on the first floor of the house opened, and an arm was stretched out, holding a slender pair of tongs, by means of which a piece of money was deposited in Veronica's open hand. So the rich people, open the window and, stick tongs out, lest they don't touch the poor people singing. Oh, my gosh. That's funny. But scarcely had she received this Christmas gift, ere a cry of pain escaped her lips, a cry which was responded to by a laugh of insulting mockery from the heartless wretch who was still standing at the open window. The penny which he had handed to the poor child had been drawn red hot from the fire. "Oh, my gosh, this is cruelty on a Christmas Eve. My goodness. Or is it Christmas Day? Oh, yes, it's Christmas Eve. Sorry. Goodness, that's awful. Veronica hastily dropped the perfidious gift and with many a bitter tear retraced her steps to her lonely home. When Veronica returned to her father's side and told him of the Christmas gifts she had brought, it cost the poor girl a severe struggle to conceal her sufferings and speak to the blind man in cheerful tones. He, unconscious of the pain she was enduring, asked her to sing for him once more before she retired to rest. And then he kissed his darling and bestowed on her his Christmas blessing. But Veronica's hand pained her much, and she went to bed with a heavy heart. In the mountain districts of Germany, the schools are very large, one master not unfrequently having charge of 200 children. Good grief. Under these circumstances, he can scarcely be expected to have any particular acquaintance with the disposition or tastes of each individual scholar, unless some casual occurrence chances to bring it to his notice. "Is not your hand healed yet?" one day inquired M. Russell, the parish schoolmaster, addressing his pupil, Veronica Medell. Veronica unfastened the bandage, which she daily tied on as well as she could with her left hand, and the worthy schoolmaster, seeing the inflamed state of the wound, became very indignant when he learned how it had been produced. "Shameful!" he exclaimed. "Thus to injure a child singing her Christmas carol. Will you let me hear your song, my little maid?" I love music well myself. "You know I am the parish precentor as well as the schoolmaster." So parish precentor, Precentor. I wonder if that's like the parish person responsible for the music. I don't know. I'm not sure what kind of title I'm looking for there. Veronica timidly obeyed. The schoolmaster was to her a formidable auditor, but the good man's kindness soon set her at ease, and she sang with so much expression that M. Russell was not only surprised but deeply moved. "Who taught you to sing thus, my child?" he inquired, when the young songstress paused. "No one," she replied. "My father is blind. He often finds the day very long, and I sing to him to amuse him." Ooh, precentor, a person who leads a congregation in its singing or in a synagogue prayers. Okay, so like a cantor. I think in a synagogue, the singing person is the cantor. I kind of thought that's what it was. Let's see. "It is almost the greatest pleasure he has, and I am so glad of that, for we are poor, and he cannot afford himself many other pleasures." "But the melody itself and the method, where did you learn all that?" inquired the schoolmaster. Veronica looked perplexed, but after a moment's reflection replied, "I have often heard our miners sing that, sir." I'm sorry, "our miners sing that air." Okay. "My child," said M. Russell to the little girl, "I see how God often overrules the wickedness of man for his own wise purposes. The burn you received on your hand has caused you much suffering and has prevented your working at your lace to earn money for your father. But if it had not been for this accident, I should never have noticed your voice, which will, I hope, provide to you a mine of wealth and enable you to procure more comforts for him than if you had been working night and day at your pillow." Veronica did not very well understand this good man's meaning, but she felt gratified for his kindness and anxious to do her best to please him. From that day forward, M. Russell gave her regular instruction in the art of singing, whilst at the same time he contrived to interest several benevolent people in the fate of this deserving family, so that the blind man's wants were fully supplied, and his little daughter was thus enabled to pursue her studies with a cheerful heart. 12 years passed away. It was a fine autumn evening, and the wealthier inhabitants of Seeburg might be seen in full toilet, flocking to the town hall. An event, rare in this somewhat secluded region, had set the whole town astir. The first Cantatrice, cantatrice, a singer, a lady singer of the capital, and one who employs a European celebrity, is about to give a concert in conjunction with her brother for the benefit of the poor of Seaburg. At the entrance of the hall might be seen the old schoolmaster and precentor, M. Russell, who was filling the office of cashier on the occasion. His eyes beamed with delight as the money accumulated on his desk, and when he recognized an acquaintance amongst the numerous arrivals, it was with no small pride that the good man produced a golden snuff-box, and offering his friend a pinch of true Virginian, at the same time whispered in his ear, "This is a gift from a grateful pupil. See, it is engraved upon the lid, and when it was given to me, it was full of gold pieces. And look at this too," he added, drawing a handsome repeater from his fob. "This too is the gift of my former pupil." A handsome repeater from his fob. Is that a clock, a watch, pocket watch? I don't know. He's bragging a little bit. Look at my snuff box full of gold pieces. Look at this thing. "You are celebrating your triumph tonight, M. Russell," observed one of the newcomers. "Yes. I'm assuming this must be Mr., but Herr, right? Herr is the German Mr. Herr, right? So I don't know if M is supposed to be the guy's first name. Maybe. I don't know. "Yes, it is a day of triumph for me, and for the town of Seaburg, too," rejoined the schoolmaster. "For she was born amongst us here, and I was her first teacher." At last, all the company had arrived. The hall was thronged to the very door, and at the appointed hour, Veronica Meidel appeared upon the platform, accompanied by her youthful brother, and with her blind father leaning on her arm. A burst of enthusiastic plaudits greeted the young cantatrice. Yes, Herr's Mr. Okay. And Frau is Mrs. and Fraulein would be Miss? I believe so. I'm reaching back into my Sound of Music knowledge. So a burst of enthusiastic plaudits greeted the young cantatrice as she gracefully curtsied to the assemblage. A band of mountain musicians supported their parts admirably and exerted themselves to the utmost to do honor to their countrywoman. George Meidel accompanied his sister on the violin, to the admiration of all present, and Veronica herself sang as she had seldom been heard to sing before. Her voice reached every heart and charmed every ear. All the pieces named in the program had been performed. A moment's pause ensued, and after repeated acclamations, the assemblage were about to disperse, when suddenly young Meidel touched his violin. A familiar air arrested every ear, and Veronica, with a voice as pure and clear as in her childish days, commenced the verse so well known to all the miners of Seaburg, the same she had sung on that eventful Christmas Eve. At this moment, the whole of the assemblage present started to their feet as one man. The band of musicians laid down their instruments, and every voice joined in the chorus. "Cheer up, have brave hearts, cheer up." The celebrated cantatrice was, for the moment, forgotten, and Veronica Meidel was only remembered as the young mountain peasant, the dutiful daughter, the loving sister, the obedient pupil. The good old schoolmaster, oblivious of his dignity, rushed to the platform, and with tears in his eyes, folded to his heart the pupil who had so far surpassed his utmost expectations. Veronica, turning towards the assemblage, with a simple grace and humility of manner which touched every heart, owned that to this good old man under God she owed all of her success. The worthy citizens of Seaburg had prepared a banquet in honor of the young cantatrice. Lord, why can't this author just say singer? But during the interval which elapsed between the concert and the banquet, M. Russell drew his former pupil aside, and speaking to her in the familiar tone of earlier days, he said, "Will you come with me, my good Veronica, for 1/2 hour? This money you have entrusted to my care is weighing down my pocket, I should like to distribute some of it this evening, and to deposit the remainder of this sum in safety at my own house. Veronica, though somewhat wearied after the exertion and excitement of the day, could not bear to refuse her old master's request, and committing her father to George's care, she set forth, under the escort of this kind-hearted schoolmaster. The darkening shades of evening prevented the young singer from distinguishing surrounding objects, and she allowed Rossel to guide her as he pleased, unconscious whither he was leading her. Well, okay, we did a little trick-or-treating on Christmas Eve, which ended up in Veronica being tricked. Now, where is Mr. Rossel taking her? No. I should like you, observed the old man, to see some, at least, of those on whom your bounty is to be bestowed. On the ground floor of the house we have now reached, we shall find a family in deep distress. Okay. Entering a dark passage, the precentor, followed by Veronica, lifted a latch and passed into a spacious but gloomy apartment. Lighted by a single candle and offering a striking contrast to the brilliant concert hall they had just quitted, a pale, careworn woman, miserably clad, was pacing the room, vainly striving to lull her infant to rest. 2 other children, about 3 and 4 years of age, lay sleeping on a tattered mattress in one corner of the room, whilst on a pallet near the stove lay a sick man supported by straw pillows. People are always sick and dying on Christmas Eve. Why, guys? Just be well. Just be well for 2 days, okay? The 2 strangers were received by this unhappy wife and mother with that cold indifference which is so frequently the companion of despair. "Is your husband asleep?" inquired Rossel. "Asleep? Oh, no," replied the woman. "I know not what will become of us." The schoolmaster then approached the sick man's bed, and addressing him kindly, said, "How are you today, Kunkel?" "Just as I am always," replied the sufferer, kindly said. "How are you today, Kunkel?"
That was weird. Okay.
"Just as I am always," replied
the audio just turned on. That was strange. Okay.
"Just as I am always," replied the sufferer, "and so long as I feel that piece of money burning in my throat, I shall never get better." "Cannot you dismiss that delusion?" interrupted Rossel. "The doctor and I have told you 100 times that burning sensation in your throat is a natural result of your disease. And what is the use of indulging a fancy which only aggravates your malady?" "I ought to know what I feel better than either you or the doctor can tell it to me," rejoined the sick man, somewhat impatiently. "And I know that I feel one hard, burning spot in my throat, just as if I had tried to swallow a piece of red-hot copper. No water can cool that spot. It is always the same, always burning." Veronica's thoughts recurred to the suffering she had experienced when her hand was burned, and her pity for the poor man redoubled. "Well, Kunkel," replied the schoolmaster, "I can only repeat what I said before. That is all a figment of your own imagination. How in the world could a piece of burning money find its way in the center of your throat?" "Oh, I know it well," exclaimed the sick man. "It was last Christmas, and I felt for the first time that burning spot." "You felt it on that evening because the ulceration of your throat had just become more acute and widely spread." "Oh, no. There was another reason than that," groaned the unhappy man. "It was on a Christmas Eve 12 years ago. Stop! Do you hear that cry under the window? It was just such a cry as that the poor child gave when I rewarded her Christmas carol by dropping a piece of burning money into her hand. Oh, I deserve all of my sufferings richly, I too well know." As Veronica heard these words, a cry of dismay burst from her lips. It seemed as if the retributive justice of God had fallen upon this unhappy man before her very eyes. It was to her a solemn and overpowering emotion, and the young singer covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. The old schoolmaster, deeply moved, turned towards Veronica. "Kunkel," said the schoolmaster in a tone of deep solemnity. Here is the very hand which 12 years ago you were so cruel as to burn. This hand is now held out to you in token of forgiveness. And see, no trace. Hey, Robin, happy Monday. And see, no trace remains of the wound you then inflicted, and no unkind thoughts harbor in the bosom of her who has now come to administer to your wants. Kunkel raised his head and looked at Veronica. No, no, he replied, sighing heavily. It is impossible. That fine lady cannot be the same as the poor child whom I so cruelly injured 12 years ago. You are making a mock of me, Imrasel. Believe me, Kunkel, what I have told you is true. Through God's goodness, that burning penny has turned to a mine of gold in the hand of Veronica Medel. And here, added he, laying a pile of crowns upon the table, here is a share of her gains which she has brought to you. Kunkel, with an air of bewilderment, gazed alternately at Veronica, at his wife, who stood weepingly by his side, and at the money which lay upon the table. I wish I could believe what you tell me, he exclaimed, but it seems to me impossible. Do you remember, lady, the song that was sung beneath my window that Christmas Eve? That song and the cry of anguish which followed it still ring in my ears. Well, good thing, Kunkel, you evil man. If you can repeat it to me now, I shall believe that what Imrasel tells me is indeed the truth. Veronica, with a voice tremulous from emotion, sang the well-known miner's song. And as she sang, the little infant's cry was hushed. The broken-hearted mother listened in admiring silence, and the sick man, folding his hands across his breast and raising his eyes to heaven, exclaimed, God be merciful to me, a sinner. Veronica seated herself by his side, spoke to him of pardon and peace, until at length a ray of hope beamed from the sufferer's eyes. He stretched his wearied limbs as though seeking that repose which had long been denied to him, and then with a gentle sigh he fell asleep. I wouldn't let that jerk fall asleep. He deserved what he got. The schoolmaster, familiar by long experience with scenes of suffering and of death, quickly perceived that the vital spark had fled. He laid his hand upon the marble brow of the departed, and repeating the burden of the miner's song, he said, turning towards the weeping widow, Cheer up, brave hearts, cheer up. Okay, so he didn't fall asleep, he dropped dead. I trust, my poor friend, that your husband is at rest after his long struggle, and you and your children shall not be forsaken. Put your trust in the God of the fatherless and the widow, and tomorrow I will come again and see what can be done for you. Veronica Medel and her old instructor now quitted the house of sorrow, and it was with very full hearts that they repaired to the hospital banquet which had been prepared for them by their fellow hospitable banquet which had prepared for them by their fellow citizens. Oh, I'm so sorry, Druid. I didn't mean to make you sad. Yeah, this one was a little more, I don't know, a little more fraught because there was literal child abuse in there. Christmas for the Rich and the Poor. I mean, there is this same, like, I don't want to say retribution or, like, what is it that I'm looking for? It's like that what's the O. Henry story? The Gift of the Magi. It's like, it always works out, or if, you know, like it's, yeah. Well, you go ahead if you need to let out some late Festivus grievances. You just put them on there. Yes, karmic justice. So what's interesting to me is there was no author for that story, whereas the Christmas for the Rich and Poor did have an author. Let's see, that one was, I think her name was Alice. Annie Froust wrote Christmas for Rich and Poor, whereas this one, Christmas Eve, does not have an author. I am betting that Sarah Hale wrote that one. I could be wrong, but I do remember reading Ruth Finley did say that often she did not actually sign her writing, but you can kind of tell from, what she said. So I'm kind of wondering if this is one of her, like, karma's gonna come to get you, but from Veronica's standpoint, be the better person, right? And forgive. I don't know that I could forgive something like that. Yes, empathy is quite difficult sometimes. I am at the moment practicing some empathy for a couple people in my life. It is the holidays. One must do what one can. So, all right. I'm sorry, Druid. I'm gonna have to read another tearjerker. This one's not quite as I guess this was not quite as sad in that way. Yeah, this one is Grandma's Corner, like I said. And this one's kind of cute, I think. Let's see. So, like I said, this one is from November of 1974, Quilter's Newsletter Magazine. And it is called My Doll Had a Wooden Leg by Theo Essen. And real quick before I read this one, because I have read this one before, and what it reminded me of is the Glassblower trilogy, which is a trilogy of books I read maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I feel like that's my pat answer when I try to remember something. It was 10 or 15 years ago. But I think it was 10 or 15 years ago. So it's called the Glassblower trilogy. It is historical fiction, and it is by Petra Durst Benning. I believe it was originally written in German and translated, perhaps, although I could be remembering that wrong. But it is actually a really good, it's kind of like the modern versions of these 1858 Christmas stories. But it is actually really interesting in terms of the blown glass ornaments are from this particular region in Germany. And that is where the characters from this book come from. Or this trilogy come from. So if you're ever interested, and it's literally like Christmas Vacation / beach read. It's that kind of fiction, but again, I thought it was really good. So Glassblower trilogy by Petra Durst Benning. So, oh no. Oh, Robin, I'm so sorry. Oh, yeah. Well, oh, poor pup. I'm so sorry, Robin. That is the worst. I feel like that's been happening to a lot of folks lately. Pets are, sick. It always breaks my heart. And we talked about this the other day. Pets and children, they rely on you. They're dependent. They need help. And so when they're hurting or they're sick, it's especially traumatic. My mom's cat was recently diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and she's doing okay. She's on medication, but she's probably not gonna have the lifespan that she should. So I guess what I can say is I feel you. You're not alone. So let's read My Doll Had a Wooden Leg. Okay. So again, Quilter's Newsletter Magazine, Theo Essen. I recently had occasion to wander through the toy display in a large department store. Remember, this is 1974. We are just getting our Christmas shipment in, said the clerk with obvious excitement. I stopped to look, and a wave of nostalgia swept over me. At first glance, many of the toys looked glamorous and sophisticated, but suddenly, under their perfection, I began to recognize childhood friends. The dolls were dear and appealing. Even the pull toys and trains were familiar under their painted realism. The miniature housekeeping items were there also, but Only where I remembered cast iron cook stoves. Only where I remember cast iron cook stoves, small tubs and washboards, toy brooms and ironing boards. The new appeals to growing up were modern miniature vacuum cleaners, electric stoves, refrigerators, and real electric irons. I actually have one of those in my collection, and I'm terrified to plug it in. I would never plug it in. It's a way to burn your house down. Give a little kid an iron. And it didn't have a dial. You just plug the thing in, and I guess it got hot. Of all the glamorous and realistic toys on display, I found myself drawn to the 1 to 6 year educational group, probably because so many of them were made of wood. Looking at the charming push-pull toys and the peggedy wooden people that fitted into colorful buses and planes. Ah, the peggy wooden people. You know, those were probably little people. I suddenly thought of Karl Heinrich, the whittling man. Strange, I hadn't thought of Karl for 100 years, it seemed. Yet my brief encounter with that gentle old German was one of the delights of my childhood. Karl came to our farm early one summer when I was about 6 or 7. He was old, stooped, and shaking, mainly from lack of food. I especially noticed his hands. They were cupped in frozen permanence, as if his fingers had forgotten how to straighten from gripping tools so long. "I chop wood good," he said, almost pleadingly to my grandmother. "I'll bet you do," Grandma agreed heartily. "It's nearly time for lunch. We'll eat first." I know it was at least an hour earlier than our usual time for lunch. Karl chopped wood for hours that day. He slept on a comfortable bed of hay in the barn that night, and the next, and the next. He soon became a fixture on the farm, for Karl had a way of finding useful chores to do. He worked willingly, although no word about wages was ever mentioned. My guess from these stories is that it's probably the 1930s, because Theo Essen seems, I'm just guessing based on timeline, and some of these others that I've read. So it sounds like, this was a man who had nothing else and was kind of drifting. When Karl was not working, he sat on the chopping block near the woodpile and whittled. Instinctively, I knew why his hands, especially his right hand, was shaped so as it lovingly cupped around the knife he wielded so skillfully. Karl, I soon discovered, was not just a whittler. He was a wood carver. I spent fascinated hours glued to his side, watching as he turned a block of wood into linked wooden chains, or tiny graduated barrels, or cups that fit one inside the other. He made windmills and jumping jacks that, when strung with string, did fantastic gyrations. Once he made me Noah's Ark and filled it with tiny realistic lambs, lions, camels, bears, and elephants. As he whittled, as Grandma called it, he told me about his boyhood home and a little village in the Thuringian Mountains near Sonneberg, the toy capital of Germany. This is not just the toy capital. This area, and I don't know that it's necessarily Sonneberg, but it's that area is like where they also glow below the glass ornaments. And you guys know what I'm talking about. It's that mercury glass, this beautiful, it's like gossamer glass, like you breathe on them and they break. But they're really beautiful. And there's such an interesting history of these. They eventually did come to the U.S. and they, I think it was Woolworths that had like a deal to get these ornaments. So I thought it's kind of an interesting story. It's historical fiction, but then some of it's true. Lots of trees in the forest. Good wood when cured for carving, he would say. From Karl's running story, I learned that he came from a family of toy makers. His carving skill had been passed down from his grandfather to his father and then to him. We belonged to the Toy Makers Guild, he said proudly. We were artists, not mere craftsmen. His eyes would glow with pride. Even the women in the family were skilled in the art of toy making. My family worked all winter making toys to take to the toy fair in Sonneberg. These toys and trinkets were often referred to as fairings because people bought them at the fair to take home as gifts. But Karl's story had a sad ending. By the time he was a young man of 16, the demand for hand-carved toys was almost nil as huge factories in the industrial area took over, turning out the fairings en masse. Karl left his beloved mountain village to try his skill in the New World. the land of opportunity. Unhappily, he found little demand in America for his skill and artistry. He became a carpenter, a woodcutter, and finally a drifter in his old age, never to achieve his dream of returning to his homeland. Carl stayed with us all summer and well into the fall. I noticed that Grandma and Grandpa held low-toned, worried-sounding conferences. Then one day, I saw Grandpa talking to Carl in the farm. I saw him press some money into Carl's hand and slap him gently on the back. The next morning, Carl didn't come to breakfast. Grandpa and Grandpa didn't seem really surprised when I told them I couldn't find him anywhere. Later in the morning, I was drawn to the hay bed in the barn. In the middle of the bed was my baby doll with the new hollow molded body that had disappeared after one of the horses had stepped on her right leg and broken it. As surely as my heart, a note was tucked under her. All it said was, "For Liebchen." I lifted her skirt and to my joy found both her legs intact. Her right leg was bowed perfectly to match her left, even to the dimpled toes and knees. It didn't matter to me at all. It was carved out of wood, but I did miss Carl. I thought that was a really sweet story. Oh yes. Oh, Druid, a cat from autumn leaves to glue on saved cat whiskers. Oh, yes, pet love is the best. It is. Yeah. Oh. Yes, Liebchen. I knew that was a term of endearment. I couldn't remember exactly what it meant. So I have to pull out more of these Theo Essen or Essen articles because they're really sweet. They're historical, and I'm assuming Theo is a woman. She had a doll. So, yeah. All right. So, one other thing I wanted to read. I'm going to go back to the Godey's Ladies book. They have in here some recipes and a bill of fare for Christmas dinner. So first, let's look at these recipes. So this is plum pudding and other recipes for Christmas. So there's a lot of paste recipes, which means like pastry. They all sound awful. So this first one, Christmas plum pudding. A pound of suet, cut in pieces, not too fine. A pound of currants, and a pound of raisins stoned. I'm assuming that means that the seeds were taken onto the grapes before they were made into raisins. 4 eggs, half a grated nutmeg, an ounce of citron and lemon peel, shred fine, a teaspoonful of beaten ginger. I'm not exactly sure what beaten ginger is. I'm guessing you just hit it until it falls apart into strands. Half a pound of breadcrumbs, half a pound of flour, and a pint of milk. Beat the eggs first, add half the milk, beat them together, and by degrees stir in the flour, then the suet, spices, and fruit, and as much milk as will mix together very thick. Then take a clean cloth, dip in boiling water, and squeeze dry. When the water is boiling fast, put in your pudding. So you dip the cloth and you squeeze it out, but it doesn't explain to you the pouring of the pudding into the bag or the cloth. While the water is boiling fast, put in your pudding, which should boil at least 5 hours. Boil for 5 hours. I've always wanted to try a Christmas pudding or some type of pudding this way. There's a really good, I think it's called 18th Century Cooking. It's the Townsend's, which is a historical reenactment company. And I think they're in Indiana. And, you know, they sell all the stuff if you wanted to do like a colonial encampment. And I think they sell a lot of stuff like to historical movies and shows and things. But the guy that owns it, he, I think, inherited it from his father, the business, and he's really smart. And probably about 10 years ago, he started putting videos on YouTube of 18th century cooking. And so he makes all of this crazy stuff. And it's really fun to watch. And like, I think the very first video, my mom might have sent it to me, was 18th century fried chicken. But he makes puddings and he cooks stuff, very strange things. And I learned a lot about how they ate back in the day. So you should check that out if you're interested in that kind of thing. And I think he's also got a lot of holiday stuff too. So I know who has 5 hours to make sure something boils. I know. So, now some of the bill of fare. Now I do not know. I don't understand like what they mean by these notations. They say remove. Well, Robin, I think the thing about burning it, I think as long as it's got the water in there, I don't think it'll burn. It's got to be soggy and wet on the outside. And what I've seen in the videos when they make these, I mean, it does come out like this big, like, lump. But when you cut into it, I mean, it is like a moist cake. So I don't know. I'm going to have to try it sometime. But yeah, 5 hours is a lot. But yeah, as long as the water doesn't boil away, that's the problem. Boiling something for 5 hours means that the water will boil away. Anyway, so these bills of fare, it says a dinner for 8 persons in December. First course, soup de la julienne. And then it says remove salmon. So I don't know if that means give them the soup, take the soup away, and then give them salmon. I don't know. Then it says boiled leg of mutton. Boiled. They boiled so many things. And then it says remove stewed beef. Vegetables, potatoes, corn, tomatoes, etc. Second course, omelet souffle, apple jelly, solid custard. And then in parentheses, this says épergne, E-P-E-R-G-N-E. Now, further down this list, instead of épergne, it says vase. So I don't know if this is like what you're supposed to put on the table to decorate with. I don't know. I don't get what these are. So that was for 8 persons. Bill of fare for 12 persons in December. First course, carrot soup. Remove turkey. Pork chops with potatoes in the middle. Pork chops with potatoes in the middle. So an épergne is a type of table centerpiece that is usually made of silver, but may be made out of any metal, glass, or porcelain. Okay. I thought it was some kind of thing. So I'm guessing it's probably kind of a shallow dish or something that maybe you'd put flowers in. I don't know why we have to differentiate between that and a vase. So pork chops with potatoes in the middle. And then it says vase, beefsteak, épergne, ham, stewed mushrooms, haunch of mutton, vegetables, potato balls, broccoli, Jerusalem artichokes. Second course, mince pie, lemon jelly, pumpkin pies, trifle, blancmange. Bill of fare for 16 or 18 persons in December. First course, okra soup. Now that will be a slimy, disgusting thing. Then it says remove stewed fish. Haricot mutton. Now, haricot verts are green beans. So what is haricot mutton? Is it green sheep meat? So pork chops arranged like a crown rib roast with potatoes in the middle. Aha! Interesting. So it is not a pork chop that has like mashed potatoes stuffed in it. Okay, so haricot mutton, stewed celery. Celery should not be hot, in my opinion. Vol au vent of lobster. Ham. Remove roast beef. Vegetables, potatoes, broccoli, corn, tomatoes, etc. Second course, woodcocks. Remove plum pudding, mince pies, Italian cheese, lemon sponge, apple tart filled up with custard. So this is so bizarre. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So this, very strange. So bill of fare for anyone from 8 to 18. Lamb and beans. I love that, bean of mutton. Too funny. Lamb and beans. I like it. I like it. Oh, goodness. All this stuff all over. Okay. Are you guys ready for some heritage of cotton? Yeah, so I'm thinking remove means take away that course. Yeah, that was my assumption, was, to take it away and then bring that next thing. So it seemed like, just based on that list, there might have been some things that stayed on the table together. Like they would bring another thing and you still had a thing, but then it would... This is 1858. We've got lots of Victorian rules gearing up. So, the heritage of cotton. Here's a couple things. First of all, I did have a chance to quickly look, and let me pull it up. And when I get a chance, I will look for more. But remember I said that the American Museum of Natural History does not have any collections online that you can look at. But the Brooklyn Museum does. Now, their pictures are not super duper, like, to make them big. I was quickly looking, but I couldn't find a way to make these any bigger. However, you can download them, I believe. So that's pretty neat. This is something that is in this book. It's this tapestry, this wall hanging. It's painted. So it's really interesting, the details of it. I love this. And I'm sorry, I can't zoom in, but this looks like, so this is 1610 to 1620. This appears to me to be, yeah, okay, they say this general color scheme, blah, blah, blah. Two standing male figures dressed in generalized European costume with full looped up pants, short coats, and ruffs around the neck. So, like, these are European people here. Hats resemble those worn by the Dutch or Portuguese. So, get that hat. So very interesting. And look at all of this data that is in their record. This is really awesome. So anyway, that is an option for us. I can go back in and see if I can try to find more of this stuff. The picture that is in this book is just this part, this upper part. So, all right. The other thing about the heritage of cotton is I did look at the chintz book, and I did a little bit of comparison, and Morris Crawford did reference Father Cordew, if you remember. He was the Jesuit priest, or Jesuit monk, Jesuit priest, I guess, who went to India in, is it the 1500s? I'm trying to remember what century it was. Let's see. Of course, I did mark this. So I feel like this was earlier, but this is saying January 18th, 1742. I, for some reason, thought it was in the 1500s, but I guess I'm wrong. So yeah, this is based on an account given by the Jesuit priest Father Cordew of the Indian traditional methods of producing fast-colored decorated cottons. And it appears that Morris indeed referenced the same thing. But he also referenced something called calico painting and printing in the East Indies. And I think that has got more details. But definitely stuff in here that was in the chintz book. And so I think we have it on good authority. At least these guys were being consistent in referencing the same data. So, as a reminder, we are reading The Heritage of Cotton by M.D.C. Crawford, also known as Morris de Camp Crawford. He was a fellow at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. This is written in 1924. And he's got away with words. We know that. So, last week I started... Sorry, my chair is really uncomfortable today for some reason. Last week we started reading the chapter on India. It's kind of a long chapter, so I split it in half. And we're going to read the rest of it. And as a reminder, let's see. This is chapter... Is it 6? Yes, chapter 6 is India. So, here we go. The remainder of this chapter I shall devote to a brief description of the techniques of dyeing and printing calicos in India, reserving further comments on this amazing trade for the following chapter. In G.P. Baker's Calico Painting and Printing in the East Indies appears a letter written by Father Cordew, a Jesuit missionary at Pondicherry in January 1742. Okay, so 1742. Describing the painting and dyeing of the finest cottons. Curiously enough, this long and more or less technical description corresponds vaguely with the brief hearsay account Pliny gives in 70 AD of the mordant dyeing in Egypt. And so, same stuff that Percival wrote about. Briefly, there were 4 principal methods of decorating cotton fabrics: resist dyeing, mordanting, stamping, and painting. The earliest was resist dyeing, that is, painting the cloth with molten wax or clay, and then dyeing. Where the resist substances adhered to the fabric, the dye could not penetrate. And by applying wax and dyeing a number of times, inconceivably intricate patterns could be produced. In India, the tools for doing this were little bent forks of iron, the points of which were joined together on the principle of a stylographic pen, and wrapped with woolen yarn or hair to hold the dye, wax or mordant, as the case may be. That was interesting. So Father Cordew said something a little bit, not different, but like not quite as detailed as that. So I'm thinking that the detail about the little, these little pens or pencils, little forks of iron, might have come from G.P. Baker's book, which I'm going to have to try and find. Speaking of which, let me add myself a note there. Okay. In Java, a little vessel of copper with a delicate spout of copper leaf attached to a reed handle was used. The opening of the spout was so small that the melted wax could only come out through capillary attraction. This made it possible to draw patterns of the greatest delicacy. Another process, known as tie-dyeing, is also a form of resist. Little bunches of fabrics are caught up and tied with a thread that resists the action of the dye, and the exquisite degree of skill in this simple method is beyond praise. This art was practiced not only in India, but reached as far as the Philippine Islands and into Central Europe, across the Balkans, and even into Tibet and Japan. Now this is interesting. He spells Tibet Thibet. And in Japan, the tie-dyeing is known as shibori. Mordant dyeing consists of applying with a brush or stamp different chemical substances to a fabric, which cause the fabric, when placed into a dye vat, to take on different colors. In other words, certain substances have distinct color affinities, and by regulating these, patterns can be produced. This is, however, an extremely limited process and requires a broad knowledge of chemistry. It does not appear in the later calicos and painted cloths to any extent, although from the early description, particularly that of the French Jesuit, it must at one time have been an important part of the older processes. At a very early date, carved wooden blocks or wood with little ribbons and pegs of metal inserted were used for designs which had become classical and for which there was always a ready market. In addition to this, there was brushwork and the use of little pads of cotton dipped in dye. So, if you remember, this is what I think he's talking about, is the chintz, the block printing of chintz. He specifically describes little ribbons and pegs of metal inserted. So those little tiny bits of metal is called the picotage, and the ribbons of what he's saying is the outlines. So you imagine a block of wood, and then you've got a strip of metal, and if you put that strip of metal into the wood so that the edge of it is sticking up, and then you hammer in all these little tiny pegs, you're going to have outlines and then these little speckles. And so if you look at a piece of chintz fabric, you'll often see, not always I don't think, but often see these little speckles, in fabrics of this time. I guess not just chintz, and that's called the picotage. And so I think that's what he's describing of this particular block. But obviously earlier, there could be, it sounds like earlier types of carved blocks, that weren't about chintz and such. We can trace the arts of resist dyeing all through the islands of the Indian Ocean and even into Tibet, Japan, and China. The Moros carried it to the Philippines, and the turban of the head-hunting Bogobo tribe is a little square of reddish-brown cotton covered with the circular marks characteristic of this craft. In Japan, the arts were first introduced by Dutch traders in Nagasaki. An old Japanese book, published in 1720, shows a merchant of Holland painting a design with a brush, and the same book contains many patterns that are safely Indian. The oldest Japanese designs all have the true color of resist, and most of their earlier stencil patterns were used with a paste made from wild rice, not with direct dyes. There is more sentimentality than truth in the idea of lost arts. Oh, sentimentality. Morris does that really well. A long study of craft history has led me to doubt the mortality of any medium to create beauty once it is firmly established. Arts become atrophied, diminishing to a vanishing point through many causes, but somewhere will abide the little spark ready to kindle at a moment's notice. Okay, I butchered that, but that's a really cool idea, a really cool thought that, any kind of art form can kind of be ignored or just kind of fall out of favor, but it's always there waiting to be picked up again. I like that. The familiar human tragedies of history have relatively little influence on these things. Wherever an audience appears with the power of appreciation, there will be found both the skill to express and the power to create and revive beauty. This is peculiarly true of the ancient arts of cotton. For a century, the mechanical products of the Occident, in their worst form, have deluged the Orient. Every banality of design, each crudity and inanity of color, every debasement of structure that could be conceived in the sordid soul of cheapness have literally been dumped in these ancient homes of loveliness. Oh yeah, he's got he's got some floweriness going on there. It would seem that the spark must have been smothered, and many earnest men and women, myself modestly included, have believed and written that the damage was irreparable. On the other hand, many smug and sanctimonious individuals have striven to prove the immense benefits conferred by machinery and trade on these devoted peoples who once held beauty as a creed. These have proven, to their own satisfaction at least, that working in the clangor and dust of a mill, tending incomprehensible driving machinery, was far preferable to stringing a loom of sticks and cords under the shade of a tree, or stamping patterns by hand on bits of cloth in some variegated bazaar or beside some idle river's flow. He is waxing poetic. The balance of trade in Lancashire, in Holland, in England, or Massachusetts was supposed to compensate for the looted lives of the lineal descendants of unnumbered craftsmen. I admit with candor and bitterness that the powers of darkness have done their utmost to the ends that charm might vanish, but they have not quite succeeded. There is another, perhaps an even more precious delusion in regard to color. Most people, and here again I include myself, have believed almost as a tenet of faith that in the so-called natural dyes there was a subtle beauty, impossible to achieve in any synthetic or chemical formula. To get color from roots and leaves, from bark, clays, flowers, and fruits, seemed more in accord with nature's scheme of loveliness than to take color from the test tube of the chemist. To treasure this illusion with consistent conviction, it is necessary to avoid even a slight knowledge of the actual practices of these natural dyers. The substances used were varied and often of an unpleasant character. Acquaintance with the methods of application would make the laboratory of the modern dye expert seem a comparatively delightful location. The dyer's quarters in ancient Asia and in medieval Europe were earnestly avoided by the discriminating and the sensitive. And if I remember correctly from stories I've read, there were districts. So I think in India, they put, there's the districts of people, like what they do by profession or by trade. So you've got the really stinky stuff is like really far on the outskirts of town. So like leather processing is real stinky and bleh. And then dyeing with the different types of mordants also could be very stinky and disgusting. And I can't think of what else. There are some other professions that are smelly and people don't like to have near them. And I know in medieval Europe, in walled cities, those types of trades were like at the far reaches, or possibly outside the walls. Yes, stale urine was an ingredient. Yep. Yes, I think that dyeing and leatherworking would be like one of those NIMBY situations, not in my backyard. Freely and joyously, I admit that our modern fabrics, at least the vast majority of them, do not compare in beauty with the ancient webs. I just love the way he's calling that. Anything that's like woven, he's calling it a web. But I am convinced that this is not because of the chemistry of color, but because the chemist is seldom an artist, and the artist must control the application of dye to fabric, as the chemist must control the formulas which create the possibilities of the artist. Oh, interesting. When this happy balance exists between functions and individuals, modern dyes are capable of producing chromatic effects that will meet the requirements of the most exacting taste. This is a kind of confession, but recently I had held another point of view. To me, the greatest dye industry of today was one of the most destructive agencies for loveliness that the ingenuity and deviltry of man had conceived. And I regarded the promiscuous and uncontrolled introduction of aniline dyes into India as one of the 70 deadly sins of our day. Oh, Morris, you rascal. Many fabrics coming from India, ghostly reminiscences of former beauty, distorted into garish ugliness, seem to support my belief. The old craft of the dyers, where beauty had matured for centuries, had been swept aside by these sinful pastes and powders and a devil's holiday made of color. Recently, as a part of India's rebellion against the West, which included a partial embargo against British manufactured goods, we remember this from the Chintz book, the old craft guilds were in some measure revived. In a country as large as India, there always have remained a few individuals who insisted on the old traditional designs in fabrics, and these were the saving spark. With humility proper to the occasion, I admit that the National Aniline and Chemical Company, one of the world's largest dye manufacturers, heaped coals of fire on my head, My criticism of their colors had been active and sustained, and I had often shown different members if this and I had often shown different members if this organization, I think it's supposed to be, I think I found a typo. I had often shown different members of this organization the ancient colors in proof of my criticism. They sent to me from Bombay, or Mumbai, which is today's title, a collection of tied and dyed silk and cotton saris that are utterly worthy of the best traditions of the ancient East, both in craftsmanship and in color. It is, therefore, with a deep satisfaction that I conclude this brief chapter on the cotton arts in India with this reflection. The world may again have every beauty that graced the golden centuries, that brought charm and gaiety to the Europe of those periods, if it but possess the will to this beauty. It has not perished, but it awaits the demand that launched 10,000 keels. Morris, you rascal. So, okay. So here, let me just hold this up so you can see right here. What you're seeing right here is from the Brooklyn Museum. I can, my other screen here. There it is. You can see that's just this top part that was shown in the book. But really amazing stuff here. It's painted. There it is in black and white. Right out of Morris's book. But yeah, all of these different people, all of the people painted in here are so interesting. Their outfits. Very cool. Let's see if I can find this other one. So, detailed Mughal painting, 16th century. So, let's see. Let's try to search a Mughal painting. Oh, of course there's going to be a ton. 2200. Let's see. Let's try this. Romance of Amir Hamza. See if that shows us anything. Nope. Is it this? Yes. So this is what he describes in here. So this is a detail of a Mughal painting on cotton, 16th century, showing use of cotton fabric as canopy from Romance of Amir Hamza in reign of Akbar the Great, 1556 to 1605. This forms one of a series of illustrations painted on cotton, 9 of which are in the Brooklyn Museum. These paintings are believed to have powerfully influenced William Morris in his decorative design. Oh, cool. It bugs me that you can't get any closer into this, but this is what is this piece, this part right here is what is shown in the book. So he's talking about this canopy here. And this is interesting. This, I don't know, this looks like a monster or some type of spirit animal kind of thing. What is this? This is the Demon of Argon. This painting depicts the Demon of Argon bringing a casket of arms to Hamza, emerging from the water, here rendered by frothy, curling waves. He presents a seemingly ferocious aspect with his spotted skin, flaming eyes, and sharp fangs projecting from a mouth with a rather frozen grimace. So, well, none of those pictures are that interesting. Very cool. This is another one we could download. All right, what's this next one? Let's see. Sir Thomas Rowe. Let's see if that one will show up. Yep. Nope, that didn't work. Yeah, I think these other ones probably don't have enough information about them to find them easily. But I'm going to try, you guys. I'm going to carve out a little bit of time and search through, because the Brooklyn Museum seems to really have a lot of good stuff. And no doubt they have quilts. In fact, you know what? I've got a little bit of time. Probably going to end a little bit early today, but let's look up quilt. What do we got here? Oh boy. Oh, you guys, look at all this. How many objects? Oh, 40. Well, let's look through these. Miriam Shapiro. Anonymous was a woman. We've definitely seen this before. Let's see. So Miriam Shapiro's collages. Good Lord, I can't read today, you guys. Miriam Shapiro's collages, like those of Idaho, were created to make connections with women of the past and to rebalance conventional male-dominated narratives. A femage. I think I remember this. This is a feminist collage. Anonymous was a woman celebrates female textile artist. Its roughly cut lace, cotton, and mesh squares set into acrylic paint evoke patchwork quilts. Only in recent years have museums recognized quilts made almost exclusively by women whose names are often unrecorded as art. Only recently? How about like still never? Maybe the museums in New York do, but museums elsewhere maybe don't. Shapiro spurned a successful abstract painting career to explore an oft-neglected corner of art history known as craft, or in many cases dismissively as women's work. Inverting the pejorative term craft, her colleagues put everyday women's creativity in a place of honor, the museum. Oh, I love that. So, yeah, Miriam Shapiro, her work is really interesting, and I like it very much. Let's see. Ooh, look at this. Oh, how I wish I could make these bigger. Oh, Anna Williams. That's wild. Let's see if anything else. Oh, look here, you guys. It's a medallion quilt with an eagle. Jill's always sending me pictures of eagles. I like this one. This one looks like it's chintz. Does it say? Oh, in advance of the National Bicentennial in 1976, this pattern was translated into a popular kit entitled American Eagle. Well, I'm going to have to find out more about that. You know, it seems like every time I glance at something eagle oriented, I find out something new. For the bicentennial. Sanford Biggers. So, why is this image so small? Because it's copyrighted. So Seven Heavens. This is one I'm not familiar with, although it probably is in the book Code Switching. But, yeah. Artist was inspired by the belief that quilts were used and displayed by 19th century abolitionists to convey coded messages. Okay. Let's see. So if you're not familiar with Sanford Biggers, he is an African-American contemporary artist who I think some of his newer work does not incorporate quilts at all. But at one point, he was doing a lot of projects that involved taking quilts or fragments of quilts and then painting or stamping. I think he does a lot of stuff with paint. There were a number of them that were three-dimensional. So he had taken they were like these kind of plywood shapes, and then he had covered them, kind of almost upholstered them with quilts. So he's somewhat controversial for that reason. But I like what he does with the quilt. So some of these don't have pictures. Huh. This item is not on view, nor does it even have a picture. It is very incomplete. Let's see, what are these? Quilt cover. Oh, this is cool. Cotton indigo dyed background. Japan, 19th century, Meiji period. Okay, so this is something that would have used a resist with an indigo dyed background. Very cool. You know, the other thing to mention in all of these museums that are putting their collections online, look out for the rights statements, because often the museums, depending on how old the item is, a lot of these museums will offer a Creative Commons like licensing as long as you're using it for, you know, not trying to necessarily make money off it. I think their creative licensing, Creative Commons, allows you to like do training, you know, do a educational programs. I mean, copyright generally allows you to do educational programs too, but you're definitely covered with these. So definitely pay attention if you're researching stuff or you're looking into stuff. Make notes of the museums you look at and what you find there, because I mean, it is an endless. The Getty, oh my gosh, the Getty has got so much stuff available. So Mara Dam says, I think I technically made a medallion quilt with an eagle, but the medallion was a huge back patch of the United States Marine Corps Eagle anchor. Oh, okay. I like that. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's interesting when you look at the eagle, like the eagle used today. You know, it does appear in a lot of, you know, military applications, military imagery. You know, it's looked at as like a patriotic symbol. Yeah, you know, eagles have so much interestingness about them. Jill and I were talking about it the other day, and I was like, you know, I do know that there's some kind of like symbology with eagles that I need to look into, and I don't know that it's necessarily something that, you know, everybody who uses an eagle, you know, like the Marine Corps or, you know, quilt makers or whoever uses eagle imagery, I don't know it's necessarily something that everybody is tapped into, but I do know that there's meaning behind the different ways that eagles are presented. So if it's got something in its beak, if it's got something in its talons, you know, the really obvious ones are, you know, the talons could have arrows, or they could have, you know, olive branch. They could have an olive branch in its beak. It could have like the Liberty associations in its beak. Yeah, there's a lot of different symbology there, and that's something I want to look into more this coming year. You know, I spent a lot of time on Sunbonatsu this year, and that was fun and kind of, you know, I wouldn't call it trivial, but I feel like eagles and the bicentennial are going to be topics that are going to keep me really busy for a long time, because there's just no end to the eagles that are out there, and the bicentennial quilts too. I keep finding them. So alas, I have my work cut out for me. So I think I'm going to end early today, you guys. I had a couple other things to read out of Godey's, but you know, they're just the usual, you know, recipes. Make some stuff with suet. So yeah, I am truly sorry for anyone I made sad today, especially you, Druid. I didn't mean to read such, you know, good Lord, a Christmas story that involves child abuse. Like, who was expecting that? I certainly wasn't. So I guess I'm going to have to start all of these with trigger warnings whenever I'm going to read something that's questionable. Yeah. So with that, tomorrow, if you find yourself with a few minutes after 2 p.m. Eastern time, take a look at quilt nerding for our Mennonite Life video. Hopefully that you'll find that fun. Hey, Kate. Aw, Druid. You know I love you, girl. Um, and yeah, if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, well, happy belated Festivus. Merry Solstice. Happy Wednesday. And yeah, so I will not be here Thursday. I will be here on the 28th for our Stitch and Glitch, and I will be here next Monday. So stay tuned for more January scheduling stuff. I think Jill and I are both woefully behind on that. She has a better idea than I do. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I hope if you're doing stuff with family that it's wonderful. If you're doing stuff by yourself or with friends, chosen family is often the best. I hope that wherever you're at, the weather is cooperates this week. If you want snow, have some snow. If you don't want snow, no snow. I want everybody's holiday wishes to come true, is basically what I'm saying. Yeah. So I hope it's an easy week for everybody, whether you're celebrating or not. So, and in the meantime, may visions of sugar plums and Morris Crawford go dancing through your dreams. All right, guys, I will see you very soon. Mwah.